a common issue that can be seen throughout the country, next on Carpe Diem. Hello and welcome to Carpe Diem. I'm your host, Samantha Williams. Today we will be touching upon a disease that could be hard for some people to admit they have, alcoholism, specifically in young adults. Alcoholism is an addiction seen throughout the country and is especially difficult to come to terms with. We talked to a recovering alcoholic and EMT about the issues with alcoholism.
My first couple years of college, I bragged that my first 40 days and 40 nights of college, like the movie 40 Days and 40 Nights, I was drunk, high, or both. My parents provided everything that we needed. I was never, hungry. I was never cold. It was a good life. My mom, when I first got to college, she was like, you keep drinking like this, you're going to become an alcoholic. And I was like, no, everybody drinks like this.
So when you're looking at the short-term side effects, you're looking more of a daily thing. If someone were to drink too much, they may be dehydrated, they may not feel well, vomiting, stomach irritation, gastritis, anything, relating to the digestive system. And, neurological side effects as well, delayed reactions. Depression starts pretty quickly with it.
But I remember my first time, like me and my buddies had a bottle of Bacardi O, and it was like the not a handle but like a liter, and it was like four of us, and we just passed it around in a circle, taking swigs. Like it was terrible, and we just kept going around until it was gone. And like I had this overwhelming, like the liquid courage, like the happiness, and then it was a lot for my first time. So then I was puking in the freaking bushes. What was in my head was, oh my gosh, like that felt amazing. Like I want to do that again. Back in that, like that's crazy. Like that's why I had a freaking like 2.4 GPA after first semester, and then after second semester I had like a 1.8. I pledged my first semester to a fraternity, and it just, my addiction took off.
If you really have a young person that's abusing alcohol to that degree, you could have liver failure, stomach issues, bleeding in the stomach, ulcers, stuff like that. Depression as well, like I said, even more so in the long term. It'll depress you for sure.
My disease is going to do everything in my power to make me quit, because it wants me either dead, in jail, in an institution, or it wants me alive and miserable and hurting everybody around me. That was all stuff that I did in my disease. That's not who I am. And letting the program into my life is the best thing that I've ever been able to do for myself. Progress is if it's a math equation, progress equals happiness, and happiness equals progress. 3 years ago, I never could have imagined anything like this. And now it's a beautiful thing that like people are starting to realize that this really is a disease, and it's not that drug addicts are bad people. we're all meant to be something. We're all meant to be something. We're all meant to succeed. You know, I couldn't be happier to come here and do this, and hopefully, you know, if we just help one person do this, you know, get another day clean, then that's all I can ask for.
We are now joined by Dr. Kristine DeJesus, who is a psychologist and coordinator of the Alcohol and Drug Program here at Montclair State. Dr. DeJesus is a Rutgers University graduate who has a passion for helping young adults with abuse issues. Before coming to Montclair, Dr. DeJesus worked as a crisis counselor for the Psychiatric Emergency Screening Service in Somerville, New Jersey. Kristine, welcome to Carpe Diem.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit more about your role here at Montclair State?
Sure. So I work in the counseling and psychological services, and we provide mental health services for all different types of issues, and my particular specialization is in alcohol and drug abuse. So we do lots of different things in terms of alcohol and drug abuse on campus. We offer groups for students in recovery. We offer a different kind of group for students who get caught in the conduct process at the university and need to have some education, or for students who are transported to the hospital related to alcohol poisoning. And then we also do individual interventions with students. So sometimes students will come in concerned about their level of use, or perhaps friends are telling them that they're concerned about how much they're drinking. And they'll come in to see if they need to make changes, and if they do they want to, and if they want to, how they go forth in doing that.
And how did you get involved into this field?
Great question. So when I did my doctoral internship at Temple University, I was asked to participate in one of the programs, and one of the alternative programs they had, and I was chosen to participate in what they call the Campus Alcohol and Substance Abuse Program, CASA. And so while in graduate school, I had part of doctoral training for clinical psychology. There's no addiction training as part of that, which is a fascinating thing because most clinicians will deal with people with addictions during the course of their professional career. And so prior to going to Temple for my internship, I had started taking some coursework because I just felt like it was probably a wise idea to make sure I had a handle on this, because I was pretty sure I'd see it in my clinical practice eventually. So when I started at Temple, I started seeing students and loved the work. And then once I had finished my doctoral internship, they had actually hired me on to do an educational program for students, specifically around alcohol and drug abuse. And that was sort of the love affair with this field, and with people who are struggling, helping them get better, and people in recovery, helping them achieve and maintain that.
Now, did you know anybody that was dealing with these issues at all that led you to going into that direction?
I think as humans, we all know someone who struggled with alcohol and drug abuse. I can't say it had any personal effect in my life, but I saw lots of friends whose families, were struggling with issues. In college, certainly, we've all seen friends succumb to either rough nights or seeing that they were building some problematic patterns. So I, like most people, had just, it was part of the fabric of growing up, but it was nothing specific that brought me to the work other than opportunity.
So now psychology, you have such an extensive background in that field. How did you choose that?
Again, it was sort of serendipitous. It just happened to be that that's where professional opportunities opened up, and there was so much room for creativity in this work. Historically, at least in the United States, a lot of interventions have been around just don't use, like Nancy Reagan's campaign, just say no. And that wasn't working, and the research was pretty solid to say that. And so when I started in the field, I was like, okay, how do I build upon this thing that's not working for many people and find a way to be creative and engaging with people? Because ultimately, what makes people well is not some intervention or some group. It's about the human connection. And so being able to be creative and connect with other people, I thought there were ways that I would really be able to support people, and it's worked out pretty well.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to start talking about alcoholism.
Okay.
So we saw in the video his causes were more towards, being in college, drinking with friends, joining a fraternity. What are some other initial causes of alcoholism?
Sure. Well, there's lots of reasons that people become addicted to alcohol. One is, biology, family history. There's a really strong component of family history of developing addiction. And that doesn't mean that every person who has a family history of addiction or alcoholism will become an alcoholic, but you have extra risk factors when you have a family member who's an alcoholic. And it doesn't have to be a parent or a sibling. It can be a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. It can be a little bit further removed. But when you do have that family history, it also increases risks. The other thing that we see oftentimes is trauma. Trauma is a big part, and I'll often say to clients when I'm sitting with them, working with them, you don't become addicted to alcohol because life has treated you well. There are lots of people who drink recreationally and have no problem. When someone becomes addicted to, whether it's alcohol or drugs or anything else, right, it's about creating space between them and their problems, between them and their emotions. And so trauma, when I say trauma, there's big T trauma, which is big life events, and sometimes it's much smaller events, but chronic events that occur in a person's life. And so either of those can really affect the way a person copes in the world. And I would say there's lots of other small reasons, peer pressure, but if we're looking at the two main causes, it's often, again, family history and then avoidance of emotion or trauma.
So there's some myths about how maybe alcoholism could be like genetic. So I know you mentioned family. Is any of that true?
Absolutely. There is a very strong genetic component to alcoholism, just similar to some certain kinds of cancer. I'm sorry. So it's absolutely, and that's a primary risk factor. There are lots of things that put you at risk for developing alcoholism, but none of them in and of themselves are major risks. But family history, that in of itself is a major risk that can cause alcoholism.
So what is the difference between alcohol dependence and alcoholism?
So there is a difference, but I think the semantics aren't as important. So if someone's abusing, people can abuse alcohol on a specific event. So you go out, let's say it's your birthday, you're turning 21, wow, it's the first time I can drink legally, and you drink excessively. That's abusing alcohol, right? People can abuse alcohol on separate occasions in life and not become an alcoholic. But someone who is an alcoholic is regularly abusing alcohol in a way that's problematic to their living situation, right? Mm-hmm. It's impacting their daily living skills. It's impacting work. It's impacting school. The young man in the video talked about how it affected his grades, affected everything. And so when we're talking about alcoholism, we're looking at a more sort of way that it's impacting your global functioning rather than, yes, you're abusing alcohol every Thursday night. It's not probably great for your Friday morning classes, but ultimately, if you're able to eventually stop because you're no longer in college and it's Thursday night and you have to go to work on Friday morning, it's not, you haven't developed an alcohol, you haven't developed alcoholism, you've just abused alcohol. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. What are some of the signs of alcoholism? What should people look for?
So definitely not being able to maintain daily activities, not being able to make it to work or coming to work chronically late, not being able to keep up with one's academic responsibilities if they're a student, not participating in their life the way they normally would. So let's say seeing friends, doing pleasurable activities that we normally would do. Other things that you'll see is people, I'm sorry, my brain just stopped for a moment.
It's okay.
So other things that you'll see when people are developing alcoholism is that they can't go without. Now, that's an interesting concept because people will say, oh, I can live without alcohol. I'm not an alcoholic. But when you ask someone to abstain for a day, that's probably okay. A week, maybe they can do that. But once you start talking about abstaining for more than a week, people are a little more skeptical. And when someone says, oh, I can do that, but I don't want to, we start wondering, like, okay, do we have a dependent relationship with alcohol? Can you function without it? Someone who's very severe into their alcoholism, very far into their alcoholism, they might need a drink to get going in the morning. They talk about the hair of the dog or whatever that saying is. And why you would use alcohol as a treatment is because you're in withdrawal. That's what a hangover is. When you have a hangover, you're in withdrawal. So the way to get rid of withdrawal is to drink more.
Right. So now, if a student sees sees this, how should they approach it? How common is it for a student to speak up and say something about another student?
So students will speak up and talk about another student, but often not to that student. They'll tell a peer, they'll perhaps tell their RA or their CD, or even their family. Sometimes we even get calls at CAPS. By the time we get calls at CAPS, someone's pretty far into their illness, and it's gone pretty far, because usually people go to their support group around them. They don't usually go to outside people for intervention. But when students are concerned about someone, or anyone is concerned about someone, one of the most important things to do is to address it cautiously. If you come out and say to someone, yeah, I'm worried you're an alcoholic, their defenses are going to go up. They're going to be like, nope, no, I'm not. We're not having this discussion, right? So it's much better to approach it in a more concerning way. Hey, I've been noticing Fridays are a little bit rough. How you doing with that? Yeah, okay. I noticed you're having this problem. So making behavioral observations. I've noticed you drank 12 drinks last night. Do you normally drink that much? Oh, no, that's nothing for me. Oh, okay. I was just a little worried about you, but, perhaps, if you want to talk, I'm here. So it's really about, treading lightly, but making sure the person knows what you're seeing that's concerning. If you come in an accusatory term, they're just going to turn you off altogether.
So more of like a casual conversation.
Absolutely.
What about family members? Is there a difference with that?
No, I would say anytime you're concerned about someone who's got a problem, and of course it's different, right? If you're a child addressing a parent, it's a different relationship than it is with your peers. And you may want to, collaborate with other siblings or, perhaps other family members, because there's a power differential between parents and children, right? Parents tell you what to do, and as a child, are supposed to do it. So it'll look a little bit different depending on who you're approaching about your concerns, but ultimately the same method of approaching should be employed, right? Engaging in a discussion about behaviors that are concerning, not accusing the person of having a problem.
So now, resources. Where can a student go if they need help?
So there's lots of resources both on and off campus. We at the university, probably for about the past 8 years or so, have offered a group on campus called Recovery Room, and that's a group for students in any phase of alcoholism and recovery. And it's open to students who have alcohol or drug issues. So whether or not you're 5 years clean, or you're thinking, maybe I have a problem, but I'm not sure, this group is an opportunity for students to come together with other students, talk about their concerns, connect, and support one another in where they're at that moment. Also, the Counseling Center offers therapy and counseling related to alcohol and drug use. So if a student's coming in is wanting to talk about, this behavior, and they're not sure if it's problematic or not, we also offer what's called recovery coaching, and what that is a support service for students who are in early recovery, so they've stopped using alcohol or drugs, and now we're trying to figure out how to live life sober. How do they be on a college campus and not drink, right? Because most college students are drinking at some point of their college career. So it can be really challenging for young people to figure out, how do I manage this? The other thing that we're launching actually in the spring, in the fall of next semester, fall 2017, is we're going to be offering recovery housing on campus. There will be,
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really a really exciting initiative. So it's a floor of students who are signing a contract saying that they will be sober. Most of the housing on campus is already supposed to be alcohol and drug free. However, we know reality is that college students drink and use drugs. But this particular floor, students will be signing a contract to say they're going to maintain their sobriety, and we're going to provide resources on that floor to those students to make sure they have the skills and the resources necessary to maintain that sobriety while being here at MSU. And then off campus, there's a fantastic amount of resources. There's a program called Young People in Recovery, YPR, and it's a nationwide organization that is specifically for young people, because sometimes people will go to AA or NA meetings, and if it's not a young person's meeting, they might be the only person under 50 in the room, and it can feel a little like... So YPR is a really great organization that it's specifically geared to young people and helping them figure out, okay, how do I navigate a life of sobriety and yet do all the things that people do in life? Because alcohol is really a big part of our culture, and so it can be pretty challenging. There's also an interesting group that has started at the Montclair YMCA. It's called Aspire. I am forgetting what the acronym stands for, but it's a program, it's a 3-month program with a 1-year follow-up that provides support for students or for young people in early recovery. You don't have to be a student, but you have to be, I think, 18 to 30. And what that program does is it provides topic-driven information. So if you have legal issues, how do you sort through those? How do you write a resume? How do you re-enter school if you've had bad grades? And it's a really fantastic program. So there's a whole emerging field in the addiction world of providing services after treatment, because treatment is really the first phase of maintaining sobriety, and it's a really important phase. But if you can't take those skills and apply them, it becomes really challenging. So there's this whole new host of services for young people to help them really learn how to function in the world without alcohol and drugs. And what we're hoping with research we'll find is that lowers the relapse rate, because oftentimes when people stop using alcohol and drugs, they relapse. And in fact, the average time that a person goes to treatment is 7 in the United States. 7. So the hope is that these post-treatment resources or support networks will help reduce that, because 7 times, it can really impact the quality of life for not only the individual, because alcoholism is a family disease, right? It affects everyone who's involved. And so these resources can be really supportive and helpful for not only the individual, but as well as the family.
So how do you choose which one to go to? Is there a system that
That's a great question. So I think it's about fit. And sometimes we don't know what's going to fit until we try it. So traditionally the only thing that was there was AA and NA, which for some people is a fantastic fit. That whole concept of the higher power and religion works really well. But as the U.S. becomes a more secular society, what I'm finding is that a lot of young people particularly, it's just not a good fit. And so there are other options, things like SMART recovery, which is based on a cognitive behavioral therapy model, or an option called refuge recovery, which is based on a Buddhist model. It's a Buddhist philosophy of addiction recovery, and their concept is that our attachment to our substance use is what causes us pain and suffering. And so when we can let go, we'll find that relief. But you're not going to know what's going to fit until you try it. I mean, some things, if you're not a religious person and the whole higher power thing isn't a good fit, I would encourage people to try, but you can't think that that's the only thing. Mm-hmm. And there's some other new programs. Actually, down in South Jersey, there's a program called Roots to Rise, and it's just a social group where they meet for coffee and they do yoga classes. So there's lots of different options, but again, you have to seek them out because they're sometimes really challenging to find.
Right.
And try new things. And that's a lot of what recovery is, right? It's you function in one way for so long, now you've got to try something new and do something different.
Definitely. So speaking of programs, can you talk to us about what the ECHO program is on campus?
Absolutely. ECHO is Exploring Change and Healthy Options. And what that is a program for students who come through the conduct process at MSU and need some education and support in making choices. Now, that's not to say that they come to the program and we're like, do this, do this, do this, do this, or if you did this, it would be better. No, it's about providing information about how your choices impact outcomes and behaviors. So a perfect example is oftentimes students are transported to the hospital for alcohol poisoning. And for those students, we feel it's particularly important to make sure that they understand how to avoid drinking to the point of going to the hospital again. Now, that's not to say that they won't make that same choice, and they're adults. It's not my place to tell them how they, to drink or not to drink or how much to drink. They're an adult, they have to make their own decision. But the ECHO program provides an opportunity for students to understand how to make more responsible and healthy decisions for themselves. So a perfect example is we can, with a student's weight and their gender, we can tell them how to get all the positive experiences out of drinking with none of the negative. And so it can be a really helpful learning experience for students. Some students don't want to change, and that's on them, and we're not telling them to make that change. But most people don't want to come through the conduct process. Most people don't want to go to the hospital. And so employing some of these pretty easy strategies can be really helpful in making change in their behaviors.
How do you get students to stay if they are really not wanting to get the help, but they're there? Are there activities or?
So for the ECHO program, is that what you're speaking about?
I guess any program on campus.
So for ECHO, students either choose or are mandated, depending on if they're sent to the hospital for alcohol poisoning or they choose to do it. And ECHO is a 2-session intervention. It's a single session with a clinician and then a group session with their peers. Other programs like recovery room or the recovery housing, students have to self-select. If they're not wanting to get support or help, there's nothing that you or I are going to do to make that different. Yeah. They have to come to that point where they're ready to make change. And when they're ready, we're certainly here to help them. And sometimes people want to make change and they approach the change. But then it gets a little frightening, and so they have to step back. And for many people, that's a process of making change, whether it's related to alcohol use or dietary change or dating or whatever it is. You know, change is not a linear process, and so we have to support people in providing them information and support, but knowing that, telling them that we'll be there when you're ready to make that change.
And so I'm sure that you've seen a lot of success stories on campus. Am I correct when I say that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, again, with 7 times being the average that people are in treatment, we see some success stories. I wouldn't say a lot, but we see some success stories, absolutely.
And quickly, because we do have to end soon, what advice would you give to students to drink responsibly and, you know, to bring awareness to alcoholism?
Absolutely. So I think in terms of drinking responsibly, the best thing I can say is your body can only metabolize 1 serving of alcohol. So that's 1 ounce of hard liquor, 4 ounces of wine, or 12 ounces of a standard, you know, regular type American beer. If you're drinking more than that per hour, which if you drink a Long Island iced tea, you are, or any other sort of mixed drink that has a lot of alcohol in it. So if you're drinking more than 1 drink per hour, your body can't handle it, and we're starting to develop, we're starting to get drunk. So the goal is to, again, get the positive effects without the negative, so limiting it to 1 an hour.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure having you here with us.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here.
Thank you. If you would like more information about this Carpe Diem or any other Carpe Diem, you can write to us at the email address on your screen, carpediem@mail.montclair.edu, or call us at 973-655-5158. For Carpe Diem, I'm Samantha Williams. Thanks for watching.